good morning and welcome to all of you. I think speaking after Mr. Manoj Chugh is a difficult task, but I am super impressed about a couple of specifics that Mr. Manoj and Deepak was talking about. Before I get into a 15 minutes best practices, what we talk about in the AI-led smart network industry, I would like to give you a little anecdote, picking a thing what Manoj, you were mentioning a while back. The pandemic times taught us a lot, right? Now, one of the very old anecdotes which I've always remembered is there was a time when I was a kid and I used to go with my parents to buy grocery, right? हम सब सब्जी खरीदते थे. We all would have bought, right? So I used to go and always, because my mom had told me that if you bend that edge of the lady's finger, the bhendi, and if it breaks, that's fresh. So which is what we used to do. But in the last 4 years, if you look at, or 5 years, if you see that today everything we are doing online. My wife never bugs me to go and buy grocery with her over the weekend, right? I think that's digitalization, right? That's digitization which has happened over the last half a decade, and it starts from your home. So getting back into my presentation, I will keep it as simple as possible. I will not get into too much of technology, but I will try and bring out, when Deepak was talking about best practices, I should talk about best practices. Now, from an organization perspective, from an enterprise perspective, I'm sure there are organizations from different vertical markets. It could be a educational university, it could be a manufacturing house, it could be a like refinery. Now, most of the use cases that we talk today, there is a huge relevance of your IP backbone, right, in your organization. And there is a strong synergy which is evolving with respect to your processes, because everything is collapsing on your IP backbone. You talk about your process industry, you talk about IoT devices, there are tons and tons of sensors which are getting into your organization. So how do you manage these complex networks? What are the key things that you should, as let's say a CTO or a CIO of your organization, consider when you are building your network infrastructure, which is today, you like it or not, AI/ML driven. Right? So there is again a very blurring gap between a IT and OT network. Till recently, we used to talk about IT networks to be driven by the CIOs of the organization or the CXOs of the organization or the VP IT, and then there was an operational technologies network which was being driven by somebody else. There are BMS networks, there are security surveillance networks, but today there is a blurring gap and there is a strong convergence in terms of the best practices that you need to consider while building your smart networks. So these are the 5 typical key pain points which any organization faces with respect to its network infrastructure, right? These are like by default, you will have these 5 issues. One is a technology device failure, cyber security, a big subject matter. It is crucial from a network's infrastructure point of view. Disaster. What if your hardware-based controller fails? Does it mean that all your IP applications go for a toss? Right? Human error, that you can't forget that when you are building processes, when you are deploying complex systems, there is a relevance of human error which comes into picture, right? And the ISP outages. So the average cost that Gartner defines on a per minute basis is $5,600 if your network infrastructure is down for a minute. So that's the kind of impact which businesses have, right? So the outcomes which, as a CIO or a CEO or somebody who's having a team and he's aspiring to build a complete smart network infrastructure, what are the outcomes that are expected? So I mentioned about technology device failure. So we are talking about automated recovery, right? So how fast does your network infrastructure recover if there is a outage, right? So which is where the concept of, is there a platform which offers you a seamless kind of a experience where your human interference or involvement is as close as zero, right? Cyber security, we all know today that the relevance of security is no more confined to the core. It's across your campuses, it's across your enterprise organizations. You have legacy equipments when we look at healthcare, when we look at manufacturing kind of vertical spaces. How does your network or AI-led smart network infrastructure look at cybersecurity? How well does it manage the cybersecurity part of it? Disaster, of course, we talk about cloud, we talk about a hybrid kind of an environment. So any physical failures, does it impact your network infrastructure? Ideally, it shouldn't, right? Human error, networks have become extremely complex. It is all your applications in your infrastructure is, as I mentioned, collapsing on the IP backbone. So it is very important that how do you cut down human errors, right? How are you managing in a most simple and unsophisticated manner your complex networks and ISP outages, right? So the three key points is your network has to be intelligent, it has to be intuitive, and it needs to be secure. So I picked this from Industry 4.0 today. We talk about Industry 4.0, any manufacturing customers in this segment. And when I talk about manufacturing, there are a lot of sub-verticals, oil and gas, refineries, they're all into this segment, right? Power, energy. So manufacturing, today people are talking about smart factories and automation to ensure their processes are much more streamlined. They are able to ensure lesser amount of the failure rates of the products which are being churned out and the improvement in the process. Now the technologies which are involved are all IP based. These are all the different technologies which are being incorporated. Now the studies, the global studies by research organizations talk about that there is a high susceptibility in this space at the edge level, because that is where you have a high threat of cybersecurity. You talk about your industrial IoT devices, so many sensors. You look at an airport, we see robots moving around. Are we sure, or do you think that these edge points are really secured? Even an IP camera, is it really secured? There could be a very high susceptibility or threat point from your edge devices. So that rate is, the report talks about this being in a manufacturing kind of an environment, there is a 48% out of the entire portfolio surveyed, 48% of customers have seen the highest threat is from the cybersecurity. That's where that becomes one single point of highest threat point. Now, how do you look at, there is no choice you have. You got to build your smart factories. You have to automate. You need to digitize your organizational environment, right? How do you take care of these kind of threats and yet are able to build a network which is simple, which is secured, which is proactively intelligent? So the flip side of any technology is that there is a high element of cybersecurity threat which is there, and these are some of the devices. You talk of healthcare, you've got a lot of legacy equipments which you can't change. They are all a part of your IP backbone. They are all susceptible to cybersecurity threats. What Gartner says about AI-based network, I will get into the relevance of artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence over the last probably half a decade to 7 years has become a very integral part when you talk about building a very smart network, right? Some of the key points in terms of artificial intelligence, I'm not going to get into all the details, is how does artificial intelligence help your network infrastructure and what are the things that you need to look in when you are building your network infrastructure and getting out the best in terms of the output, the outcome which you are expecting. So it should be able to solve a wide area of business problems, right, in the digital world. Now, reveal better ways of doing things through advanced probabilistic analysis. So artificial intelligence in your network infrastructure has to have these kind of features. Gartner is talking about in the next 3 years, there is going to be a 5 times leap in terms of adoptance of an orchestrated solution or a software on your network. Now, you cannot look at building technologies or platforms in silos anymore. As I was mentioning a little while back, Your IT, OT networks were looked at differently, but today there is a strong convergence. So you will have to look at how do you build your infrastructure on a total basis and not in different silos. Coming to the best practices. So this is important because we all know, and most of you would have met a lot of OEMs, vendors who are industry leaders. They are in their own domains, having solid technologies. People talk about terms. People talk about zero-touch auto recovery. Now, I'm sure all of you might not be from a network domain, but what does zero-touch recovery mean? Every industry equipment vendor is talking about zero-touch recovery. It actually means that if there is a failure in your network infrastructure, the replacing the product is the most simple thing that even an unskilled person in an organization can do. But does it really recover at a zero-touch basis? Zero-touch recovery means that you replace the hardware. If there is a hardware failure, there should be zero involvement of a skilled person to get into configuring that equipment, setting certain policies. Now, that's where the concept of true zero-touch recovery comes in. You replace the hardware, it should be able to push and get the product up and running in the network environment, right? That is where your downtimes of the network become much, much lesser, because when you have true zero-touch auto recovery, your network infrastructure downtime reduces by incorporating. This is a pure AI which is built into your smart network infrastructure. Proactive analysis and maintenance, again, very, very important. Networks, as I was mentioning, have become extremely complex. What does this mean is, do you want to react to an issue, or you want to have a proactive approach on your network infrastructure where you get alerts in a proactive manner? A simple example is, if you suddenly realize, or if you get an alert that your network infrastructure from a particular node, there is an excess of data which is getting pumped. Right? That's a proactive measure rather than a node pushing excessive data, which could be having a malice or it could be having a viral attack, and then you are reactively addressing that. So is your network infrastructure, the software platform, giving you a very strong proactive analysis and maintenance? And how this happens is by monitoring your network on key parameters of your network infrastructure on a 24/7. So the point I'm trying to drive from a best practices is, there are generic terms today. Zero-touch recovery has become a generic term which every manufacturer or vendor uses when it comes to network infrastructure. Key points to be considered when you look at these AI-led technologies are the points where I'm trying to drive at. Auto, radio, and channel analytics, we all know that every organization today has a very strong relevance and use case of wired as well as wireless networks. Wireless LAN networks, like this hotel, we are all connected. We are probably connected to the Wi-Fi of this room. So how good is the AI analytics built into your platform that you are having a 24/7 data analysis, which helps you to get you the best of Wi-Fi channel engagement, right, in terms of user experience. As a customer, you are not really seeing what is the technology behind. But when you adopt technologies, you need to see what is the best technologies available and what are the parameters which will help you to build the most robust network infrastructure. The next important 3 points, again, we talk about advanced locationing services. Couple of use cases I can refer here when we talk about an educational campus or a healthcare industry. Today, RFID tags are tagged to the class 4 employees. Their role is to get a patient from an emergency point to the general ward. Now, if that transaction is going to take 10 minutes, they are tracked. The doctors are tracked. Now, locationing services, again, is a very broad-based concept when it comes to wireless LAN environment. Now, are you really choosing the right solution? Are you ensuring that you are getting a locationing, the locationing concept is as accurate to the tune of 1 meter to 2 meters? There are people who will say, yes, we have this. But are you looking at it from that perspective? So you will have to dig down to choose the best of the breed in terms of technology. Zero trust security architecture. No single vendor can say that they have a solution which offers you a complete zero trust security. I am talking from a cyber security point of view. So zero trust security very clearly means when you are choosing a perimeter security solution, you're choosing an endpoint solution, you're choosing a IPS, IDS kind of a solution, you will need to look at the best of breed there. What they do is they ensure that if there is a malicious malware in the network, if there is a virus, it will identify. Now, is your network infrastructure, the so-called smart network infrastructure, smart enough to identify, integrate with those like the best of breed technologies and are able to block those ports or block the entire segment? That is what is advanced AI-led, I would say, smart networks or SDN-led networks. So these are the key parameters, I would say 6 key parameters at a broad level, zero trust security or zero touch recovery, you will have to consider when you are building your networks. Lastly, but very importantly, asset management. Are you able to see through a single pane of glass, a single dashboard, are you able to see your entire IP infrastructure? Are you able to see the LAN part, the wireless LAN part, the SD-WAN part, as well as the security part, the cyber security components? Are you able to push policies proactively? People who in this room are network savvy, and if you have in your earlier part of your career configured switches and all today, access control, a very simple concept, it takes around 30 to 40 minutes to configure a Cisco switch and push access control list. Now imagine an environment where there are 100 such switches, which is a basic case in a mid-sized kind of organization. So can your central dashboard, the software part, can it be smart enough to push policies? And this all results in much lower downtime, a very strong visibility, and this is not related, or this is not about just your network infrastructure. Any IP device which is a part of the network can be tracked and can be managed. So that is the power of an AI-led network infrastructure, I would say, platform. Of course, hardware is there, but the AI-led software has to be strong enough. And these are the 6 points I felt are a must for any of the organizations, be it an educational institute, manufacturing, healthcare, IT, ITS, or a BPO, to be to very strongly consider and then take the decision. I'm going to talk about 2 case studies or 2 use cases. This is a typical smart factory environment. So what you see is on this side you have the IP-based equipments which are all there in the factory. You've got PLC machines, you've got robotics, you've got mobile vans which are on the IP. And how your smart network needs to be, how the wired and wireless solution should be considered when you are deploying it, because this deployment is going to be a part of your digital strategy, and this investment is going to be there for minimum 5 to 7 years. Is there the scalability? And from a wired wireless perspective, from a cyber security point of view, you consider the best of breed cyber security brands, but is your network infrastructure, software platform strong and smart enough to integrate with the best of breed brands to ensure they give you the edge point cyber security control? That becomes very important and relevant from a use case point of view, be it a manufacturing or a similar kind of an environment. And of course, the single pane of glass, which gives you the complete visibility, the complete map, and the complete availability of your IP-based network infrastructure. Healthcare, again, a very strong relevance. Your Wi-Fi networks have to be robust. You can't expect dips. Today we talk about online medication, online consultation. There are online operations which are being, which are happening for almost a decade. Is your infrastructure strong to support that? Is it strongly secured? Cyber security plays a havoc. Statistics talk about that. Is it strong enough? Are we able to monitor that entire network? I was talking about a simple use case about how do you track your employees, typically in a healthcare kind of an environment. And then redundancy. Redundancy today is no more about hardware. How strong is your AI-led software network to ensure it comes back within split seconds or within a minute to ensure your IP-based applications, and most of it is on the IP-based platform, is up and running. So these are some of the very relevant use cases, and there are a lot more when we talk about smart networks. So with that, I would like to end my session, and probably I'll be very keen if any of you are interested, we could talk during one of the sessions or the off time. Thank you.